All right. Well, good morning, everybody. It is just past 8:30. Welcome to our February Bloom Business Series webinar. Our presenter today will be presenting a few best practices in hiring and interviewing for small businesses. As we know, in our current labor shortage, this is definitely a much needed topic. We try to keep our business series topics topical, and today we are doing just that. Today's event is made possible by our presenting sponsor, PNC, and with us today is Kimmy Lay, Vice President, Branch and Business Center Manager for PNC's West Branch location, and friend of Downtown Inc. to provide a few sponsor remarks. Kimmy, welcome.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for the introduction, Jonathan. Yes, as Jonathan said, my name is Kimmy Lay. I'm the Business Center Manager at the West Manchester branch for PNC. With being a part of the PNC retail banking team in New York, I am especially proud to have PNC serve as a sponsor for the Small Business Series, the Bloom Series, in partnership with the York County Economic Alliance and Downtown Inc. PNC is a Main Street bank, which means we combine knowledge, insight, and strategy of a local banking team with strength, resources, and technology of one of the country's largest diversified financial institutions. PNC's hyper-local philosophy not only influences how we serve our clients, it also drives the way we show up for the communities where we live and work. Thank you for having me today. I look forward to today's discussion.
Great, thank you, Kimmy, and thanks again to PNC for partnering with us again for the 2020 Bloom Business Series. All right, and now I have the pleasure of introducing today's presenter. Beth Trimmer is an HR consultant with Alternative HR. She has more than 15 years experience in the HR field, working in manufacturing, defense, and banking industries. Her professional experience includes recruiting, hiring, onboarding, new hire orientation, leave of absence, and HRIS administration, as well as event planning. Beth earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in Labor and Industrial Relations from Penn State University. She has a passion for meeting people and helping to foster positive work relationships while partnering with clients to meet their business needs. Thank you, Beth, for being with us today. And before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping items. If you have any questions for our panelists, for Beth, please submit them at any time using the Q&A chat feature along the taskbar at the bottom of your screen. And at the end, we'll set aside some time for Beth to answer your questions. So you can submit those questions at any time, and we will curate them and discuss at the very end. So Beth, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, John, and thank you everybody for joining today. Through this, hopefully through this session, I'll give you some interesting facts and kind of give you some guidance on some of the laws of recruiting and also some best practices. So just to give you a little quick overview, the top of the screen says what a year it has been, but as we all know, COVID and the worldwide pandemic has been more than a year. So just to give you a few statistics that kind of hinder us from hiring, we had roughly 400 million cases of COVID, and that's a February 2022 statistic. Over 936,238 deaths due to COVID. The pandemic had pushed more than 3 million baby boomers into premature retirements. So that means that there are less people out there in the workforce looking for jobs. And also what hindered us and still hinders us is by November 2022, the Trump administration had reduced the number of green cards issued to people abroad, and that number also affected, some of the visas that were paid so we could hire outside of the United States. Along with that, the employment rate is actually going down. So the PA employment rate is at 4.9% compared to 5.8% just last month. So what does this mean? So as the slide says, no need to be a scientist, that this has been a huge impact on the way that we do business, the way that we hire, and especially the way that we retain talent. So we have to be a little bit creative on how we bring people into the workforce and how to retain them. So where do we begin? There are a number of laws that will affect your hiring process, particularly in the area of discrimination. So there's a few that you should be aware of. First is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So this prohibits discrimination in employment practices when the discrimination is based on a person's race, color, sex, religion, national origin, and later added with sexual orientation and gender identity. The Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1975 was actually an amendment to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, and this makes it illegal to refuse to employ a woman because of a pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical condition. The Age Discrimination Employment Act of 1967 extends discrimination protection to persons aged 40 years or older, and this is for organizations with 20 or more people. And then the Americans with Disability Act of 1990 prohibits discrimination against qualified individuals with disabilities and organizations of 15 or more employees. The ADA also requires you to make reasonable accommodations to individuals with disabilities so that they have an equal opportunity to apply for jobs and be hired on. So these are, again, just a few laws to be aware of. There's also some helpful websites out there on legal compliance that you might find beneficial. That would be the EEOC website and also the Department of Labor website. Okay, so what do you do before you hire? Hopefully everybody is familiar with completing a job analysis. There are some samples that I provided that everybody will receive after this. But a job analysis is very important to conduct to determine the responsibilities, tasks, skill sets, physical requirements of the job. This will go a long way in helping you to also develop job descriptions. So what has kind of changed with developing a job analysis in the past year or 2 years? Some important things to note is, will this role be remote? So there's a lot of businesses, that went remote with the pandemic. A lot of businesses have returned to on-site, but a lot of businesses are still staying remote or more of a hybrid work functionality. So you want to make sure that you include that or evaluate that for the job. What technical skills do you need now that you didn't before? So same thing along the lines with being remote. This may have also brought some more technical issues and more technology base that you need in order to keep people in their job and keep people moving. How has your culture shifted and how have you responded to this? How do you communicate differently now? A lot of people are using, virtual media to do interviews, to do meetings. Have you done a compensation analysis? And are you offering a competitive wage? Have you changed or adapted your benefits package? And have you changed or adapted your time off policies? Because again, most people for the pandemic were used to working from home. So it's a little harder to make that shift back to the workplace. So a lot of companies have seen that if they adapted their time off policies or been more flexible with their work environment, it helps to attract new talent. So with this job analysis, it's typically conducted by an employee's HR department or by a certified consultant. Hiring managers should also play a role in this because they can help in developing the job description, identifying job-related competencies and things like that. So again, you want to review your job description. Have the job duties changed? And is this reflected in the job description? As an HR consultant, I typically tell businesses that it's pretty good to do an updated job description or at least look at your jobs about every 2 years, just to make sure there has been no shifts in responsibilities. Again, is this role, is it remote? How has this changed the competency or the skill set of the person that you're looking for? Are there new technical skills you need to know now that you've never thought of before, like Zoom or other, virtual frameworks? How has your organization changed in the last year? Corporate culture is very important. It's something that people look to be a part of. And if you don't feel like you're a right fit in the culture, people tend to leave. So that is definitely something that you want to focus on. Do you know who you are now? Have you changed the way that you operate, communicate, interact with customers or vendors, or carry out your day-to-day business activities? So this is important to think about. And if things have changed, to update, your employer website or any other types of communication that you have with employees and other outside individuals. So why is this important? Go to the next slide. So this is important because, again, this attracts your outside or potential new workforce. So it's very important to focus on compensation and wages, because this has definitely changed over the past few years. You want to make sure you do a compensation analysis for the roles you're hiring for. And you want to take a look at the market rate currently, just to see that if you're being competitive or not. There's a huge national conversation over minimum wage. As you probably heard, it's been going on for a little while now. So there might be changes coming our way. And if you take a look at what a living wage is, so living wage is defined as the minimum income necessary for a worker to meet his or her basic needs. It's not the same as a subsistence wage, which refers to a biological minimum. Needs are defined to include food, housing, and other essential needs, such as clothing. So if you take a look at the poverty line in Pennsylvania, as defined by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, $27,180 a year for a family of one, or roughly $13.06 an hour, is at the poverty line for PA. So you want to make sure that you are offering more in wages to attract new talent. So what is the takeaway from all of this? You want to make sure you're offering the competitive wage that's attracting to someone to join your organization, and they need to be able to support themselves. They shouldn't be going into poverty to do a job that they love. Employers are desperate to hire, that they provide a wage higher than the salary grid provides, and employees still end up leaving because they're always looking for the next best rate, or because they don't fit the corporate culture. So again, it's not always about money. You want to make sure that you are offering a competitive wage, but you also have a culture, and the employee needs to feel like they are part of that culture and they fit in and they make an impact. Some other things to think about: what type of benefits do you offer? Are there new benefits out there that you want to consider to help attract new talents? Have you changed or adapted your benefits offerings in the last year? And why is this significant? So, as I mentioned, I wish I'd kept account of how many job seekers have indicated to me the number of important factors in choosing a job. And one is that offering quality healthcare. That seems to be a huge response. So people will be looking for several types of jobs that offer lower cost healthcare, but actually have more benefit. And I know that's hard for employers to provide. This has increased in overwhelming over the course of the past year when people are looking for jobs. So you want to pay significant attention to this, and also significant attention to mental health. So for instance, does your company provide an EAP? So those of you who might not be familiar with an EAP, this is an employee assistance program. And it's a benefit program that assists employers with personnel problems. It can be work-related problems that may impact job performance, health, mental, or emotional well-being. It's generally, it offers free and confidential assessments. You can work with providers to, like, I think the typical is employers will give 3 free counseling sessions, and then most of the times it's covered by the insurance provider. They also do short-term counseling, referrals, and follow-up sessions. So you may want to check with your current provider to see if you have this available. If you do not, Alternative HR works with WellSpan and Mazziti and Sullivan EAP programs, and we recommend those for a starting point. So continuing on with the job analysis, some other things to think about is, have you adapted your organization policies? Do you now have remote work policy? If you don't have a remote work policy, is this something that you should add to attract new talent, or hybrid work environment where it may be sometime in the office, sometime at home? What type of COVID related policies have incorporated into your office setting? Have you adjusted the way you look at time off? People are looking for flexibility. Take time for illnesses, take time to just have a mental break. So a PTO style system is kind of what we recommend, kind of moving away from, sick leave, personal leave, and just have it all incorporated into a PTO policy. So if somebody is sick, they don't have to say, I'm taking a sick day. They're just requesting a PTO or a vacation day. So why is this significant? It's how do you now personally react when someone sneezes next to you? Everybody kind of freezes up and, doesn't even want to come near you. So it's some things to think about, and culture wise, to try to improve the way, talent looks at you as a company overall, and, having more flexibility when there are issues that arise. So just a quick pulse check on recruiting and retention. So the conversation has not taken us to actual recruitment yet, so we are getting there. And that's important because there's a lot you have to do before you start recruiting. And again, that job analysis will go a long way in helping you predict and find the talent that you need. So these considerations are important when you make decisions to hire, but are just important when you're thinking about your existing employees, when it comes to performance management and also retention. So how has the new culture changed the way your current staff, perform, how they think of the company? Is it time to actually give, raises or salary adjustments because you're bringing in newer people at a higher rate? So this is just as much as about recruitment as it is about retention. So how many of you, think about it, have lost your best employees in the past year or two? Do you know why you've lost those employees? It's possible that it's been a change in culture before you're adding your new staff. Maybe you need to take a look at the company overall, see if there are things that are consistent with the past employees leaving. If there is, maybe it's something that you should change to try to keep the current staff you have and also retain your newer staff. So part of the job analysis and the next steps going into recruitment is to create that recruitment plan. So when you're creating a recruitment plan for your organization, it's necessary to also advertise, and advertising does cost money. So some things before you advertise you should think about is what has changed in the virtual world. Geography. Is this, again, a remote work position? We kind of keep focusing on that because that's, a big topic. Does this position expand your current zip code? We're based in York County, but are you willing to hire somebody from Lancaster if they can work remote most days, or even from other states? So if not, are you prepared to have someone relocate to the community, and what are the costs involved with relocation? Has your industry been significantly impacted by COVID in terms of job losses? What is the market saturation for your needed skill set? That's important to look at. Does your requested skill set exist in the market now? Is this, a skill set that may have been important prior to COVID, but now there are more individuals looking for other areas of the market? What are your transferable skills? So a transferable skill is an ability or expertise which may be used in a variety of roles or occupations. Examples include communication, problem solving, and self-control. Former military skills are often overlooked. Many of their skills are transferable in most cases, where they may have done something similar in the military, but it may be considered a different role or title outside of the military. So you want to make sure you do look at resumes and kind of talk through to people about their experiences, just to see if some of those skills may be transferable that you might not often think about. So how do you advertise? We're probably all aware that traditional advertising has been newspaper, radio, signs. Do people actually listen to the radio? I mean, most times when you're driving, don't you usually change the station when you hear them talking? So is this really still a good way to advertise? How many people are still getting newspapers? So it's just some things to think about. Some more contemporary ways to advertise are internet or job boards. Some examples would be Career Builder, Monster, Indeed. There are also public and private agencies as well. And some things that you may not think about as good places to advertise, maybe community and faith-based centers. They're, big community and culturally based. They, might hear about a job and tell it to their, fellow attendee. Veteran organizations, they're definitely a way to get those transferable skills and people getting into the workforce that are interested that you may not often think about advertising to. Some diversity affiliates, so like diverse chambers. Referrals, they're always usually a top way to advertise, word of mouth, networking. Usually employees aren't going to recommend a friend or family member that is going to make them look bad. So you usually will get pretty good talents with employee referrals. And social media has definitely been a big way to advertise, because who's not on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or some type of social media platform? So how do I interview once I get the applicants? You want to mirror your current landscape. So again, if you're working remotely, then you might want to have a more remote type of environment to conduct the interview. Do phone screens, video conferencing, use platforms like Zoom. Are you working hybrid? So if you're working hybrid, again, you can still use those same platforms for working remotely, or you could do an in-person interview as well. When you're interviewing, though, you should always explain to the person you're interviewing what your work environment is. Is it remote? Is it hybrid? Is everybody back to work? Because that can make a big difference in their decision. If you're currently on site, usually the best ways to kind of handle those interviews are via phone or in person. So you want to make sure you reflect on your current reality and enable the candidate to self-select and or based on their comfort level and respect their decisions on one way or the other. So there still are a lot of people that don't want to come back to the office because the pandemic is still out there. So again, you want to make sure that you are listening to them, and if it is possible to be flexible with them in the work environment, whether it be, again, remote or hybrid work, that you are taking that into consideration. So there is a lot less stress and anxiety and mental anguish over how individuals feel about being in a physical environment and with close contact with others when they are working remote or hybrid. Okay, so again, when you're ready to start interviewing, you need to set the stage and allow the candidate to ask questions of you as well. You want to create an authentic view of your organization. So you want to make sure that you're being specific with your mission, vision, values when you're communicating that to them. You want to create an accurate depiction of the role. So when you post a job description or you review the job description with the person interviewing, you want to make sure that is really the role that they will be doing. Do not embellish or create false impressions to try to get them interested or hook them. And why? Because studies show the number one reason employees leave an organization in the first 2 years is that they felt strongly that they did not have a realistic view of the role and or company. During the interview process, that the reality of the role did not match up with their impressions. So again, you want to make sure that you are being consistent and authentic with them, and anything that you tell them is something that you go through. It's not just a false promise. So you want to make sure that you plan your interview questions. So create a list of legal, we like to use behavioral interview questions to ask candidates. You want to focus on candidates' past experiences, their behaviors, knowledge, skills, and abilities, because that's how you're really going to focus to see if they are the best person for the role based on your job description. So some questions you can ask are, give me a general overview of your current or most recent responsibilities. Give an example of a goal you reached. Tell me how you achieved it. How do you handle a stressful situation, such as an irate customer? What have been your biggest challenges to date, and how did you overcome it? And again, remember to ask each candidate the same question and try to avoid leading in questions. Like, for example, does this type of activity, does it bother you? Or would it bother you? You don't want to kind of lead them into an answer. You want to have those open-ended questions where they kind of explain themselves. Some topics again to avoid would be anything regarding those laws that we talked about earlier. So you want to avoid anything age related, marital family status related, pregnancy status, religion, race, disabilities, national origin, military status, or even background such as arrest records. And also think about too how you want to do the interview, if you want to do it as a team or an individual. So multiple people doing an interview represents a broader area of interest and more than one person to help you make the decision, but also realize the downside of doing team interviews is the candidates are likely to become nervous and find it more stressful. So, next slide. Have you shifted your new hire paperwork, how you onboard employees? Is it able to be handled virtually? Sorry, can we go to the next slide? Thank you. Some things to think about. There are systems out there where you can actually have paperwork completed through the onboarding system. So there's nothing that they have to do during an orientation. So it makes it a little bit better of a presentation, such as having fillable forms or even having electronic storage of personnel records instead of having things so paper oriented. This has also been a shift, with the COVID environment and being more remote and hybrid. It's easier to access electronic information that way. Do not skip over or ignore a comprehensive orientation program for new hires. You want to make sure that you spend enough time with key personnel within your organization, whether it be virtual or not, so they get a real feel for the company. You want to ensure understanding of business processes. There are current statistics that show about 4% of new hires leave a job after a disastrous first day. So you really want to make sure that you are making a good impression and being thorough with your onboarding and orientation process. And over 22% of turnover is usually within the first 45 days. So just some important statistics to keep in mind. You want to create an effective onboarding program. So before the first day, outline expectations, communicate your enthusiasm for the person joining you, making sure they're staying engaged. That way you don't lose them. Before the first week, making sure you have a training plan for them together. The first day, again, you want to introduce them to key personnel, introduce them to your mission, vision, values, culture. Over the next 90 days, provide ongoing support and training for them to make sure that they are successful in their role. And the first year, constantly encourage feedback throughout the year, making sure there is open communication. So when problems do arise, you're not surprised by them and you can kind of work through them before that person decides to leave. So again, keep in mind the following. You want to spend time with your job analysis, before you recruit, to allow you to attract and retain the right talent. Expand your mind in both the ways you advertise and who you would consider having transferable skills. Again, that advertising is very important. Try to think outside of the box on places that you wouldn't often think of to advertise. It may help you get those hard to find individuals for the jobs that you're looking to fill. If you want to interview the candidate, allow the candidate to also interview you. Let them ask you some questions, making sure that they keep engaged and they're excited about the job and that it really is a good fit for them. You want to focus on a competitive wage and clearly articulate any benefit programs that you have, because again, benefits is a driving force in why people leave a current job and are looking for a new job. They want to make sure that the benefit package is right for them, and benefits are expensive, so people really look for that great plan to have. You want to create an authentic response to both what the job is like and the culture of your current work environment. And again, remember, the number one reason people move on from organization is not from feeling valued. Is for not feeling valued. So what are you doing as an employer to show your employees that they are valued? Make sure you're doing those exit interviews when people leave to try to find that commonality of, why people are leaving, making sure you have touch points with your current employees to see what they need or value in a workplace, and actually listening to them and trying to help fulfill their needs or what they're looking for. I know we can't do everything for everybody, but it's always good to kind of do like a stay survey or a pulse survey to see how people are feeling, and again, making sure they are feeling valued, even if it's like a little thing like an email to say, thank you, what a great job. Making sure when you are thanking them and telling them it's a job well done, that it's timely. It's not weeks later when something else has gone wrong and they don't feel like they're appreciated. So that those are some things to definitely consider in this new market.
All right. Well, thank you, Beth. You presented a lot of great information for us this morning. And I know that we have a number of folks on the call who are here because they have questions about the hiring process, especially in light of our current climate in terms of job and labor shortages. Not so much actually labor shortages, not so much job shortages. There's a lot of jobs to go around. Just as a reminder to all on the call, if you have any questions, feel free to submit those in the Q&A function on the bottom of the screen. And we already have a few that have come in, so I'll go ahead and get started with those. This is a great question to start with. So one of our attendees asked the question, Beth, how long should you leave a position open? Should the hiring process perhaps be rushed just to fill the position, or should the person doing the hiring take their time, but maybe they'll be in a kind of a bind for a while?
So my experience is you should never rush, because you could end up hiring somebody you think might be a great fit and they don't often stay. So not only are you looking for somebody that can fulfill the role, but you're also looking for somebody that's also a cultural fit for the organization. But you don't also want to leave, again, the job out there too long. So my suggestion is maybe leave it out there, a month, maybe a month and a half. If you're not getting the right type of response, maybe pull it down, look at revising the job description, look at other ways to, post the job, such as, like those community or faith-based organizations. Or if it's like a certain skill set you're looking for, like maybe it's, an engineering firm that maybe you're going out to, engineering networks and saying, hey, we have this position, can we post it on your site? Those types of things. So think of creative ways to kind of keep it out there. But definitely I wouldn't rush to hire somebody, because usually it, for the most part, doesn't work out.
Great. Yeah, that's helpful to hear. So speaking of creative approaches, another question that a audience member submitted is, Are creative incentives, for example, signing bonuses, store discounts, et cetera, a good idea for recruitment? And I've seen a lot of creative incentives out there. Perhaps a lot of them are out of the traditional box. So is that, in general terms, is that a good idea?
I think it is if you're, in a bind to get people. It's good to offer sign-on bonuses, but again, you want to be, particular about the sign-on bonuses, that if they would leave within a certain time frame, that they would have to pay it back. So think of the logistics, but also if you can think of kind of, like you said, outside of the box ideas to attract people. You want to make sure when you're offering things, though, that you're not pushing down the morale of your current workforce. So an example would be, maybe you have a set PTO plan that everybody coming in gets 2 weeks, but now you want to post something that to get new people in, you're going to offer them 3 weeks. You have to think about how your current workforce is going to feel when they see that. And it's most likely going to drive down the morale. So whatever you're offering, just make sure that, can this be available to retain your current workforce? Is it something you want to offer to them? Or along with the sign-on bonus, if you want employee referrals, are you offering a bonus to your current workforce for bringing in talented work?
Great. Okay. So next question definitely relates to what we we're just talking about in terms of the hiring process. The question is, what is the best way to advertise that we are hiring? And you mentioned this a little bit in some of your slides. We know of Indeed. We know that we can put out social media posts, and I've heard, like Facebook has its own job portal where you can kind of post jobs, and I haven't heard favorable things with that. Is it best to maybe avoid some of those social media outlets, or is it best to kind of just get it out everywhere? What would you recommend?
So it doesn't hurt to get it out to a lot of locations. You want to make sure you're thinking through it, though. Like, you're not going to post to, maybe an agricultural firm if you're not looking for an agricultural type job. I would say probably, just from my experience when I'm looking through recruiting people, a lot of people are using Indeed. That seems to be the biggest job site. So besides employee referrals, that's where I see the most applicants coming through. I think it is good to be broad with your selection. And again, you want to focus on those areas, that you think you might get some recognition. Again, I'm not a big proponent of newspaper or radio, even signs. Sometimes you might get somebody's attention. They might see it as they're driving, but are they really going to remember it when they get home? So more social media or, internet-based options, I think, are your better way to attract.
Great. And driving into work today, as you say, don't use radio. I actually heard an ad for Indeed, and I guess that their news services, they actually can do like live interviews through Indeed now. They have that function now as well, which that's new to me. So
yeah, I know some companies are using that. There's even a lot of applicant tracking systems that are partnering with different types of businesses where you can have like a interactive conversation like this as well. So it has definitely changed the recruiting market.
Okay, great. All right, yeah, we got a few more questions coming in here. And just a reminder to all, if you have any questions, feel free to submit them to the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Next question here is, given the current state of employment challenges, what is the long-term forecast for the job market? Obviously, it's not going to stay the same, hopefully, but what is kind of the long-term projection for it?
I have a feeling it's going to pretty much stay the same or get harder for you to attract employees, because again, we lost a lot of the baby boomers. They decided to retire early. A lot of people want to work from home, so you're not going to attract as many people if you are, forcing people to be on site. So it's good to have those flexible options. And the unemployment rate has gone down significantly. I think a year ago in Pennsylvania or statewide, it was like 14% along those lines. And again, we are down even from last month in in York. So it's going to continue to go down. You're going to continue to have people that don't want to go back to work. So you really have to be creative and try to entice people into the workforce.
And to piggyback off that question, this is definitely relevant to downtown York. You know, one of the hardest hit industries, of course, is the hospitality industry, particularly restaurants. You know, for a variety of reasons. But are there any kind of long-term projections for the restaurant industry? Are they kind of mimicking or following that same trajectory that you just described?
So I'm not 100% sure exactly what they're doing. That can be something I look into, but I would imagine that they are trying to think outside the box and be creative with that too. I constantly see signs as I'm driving by that we're hiring. You know, I'm sure they're probably offering incentives as well to attract or maybe a higher wage, you know, especially as you said, you know, restaurants servers don't make that much money. So there might be some incentives for them to earn more, or some bonuses that you might want to suggest for top sales, things like that.
And I imagine, you know, company culture probably is a big part of that. Especially, I mean, the hospitality industry is a stressful industry. So
Yes, it is.
The culture is a big part of that as well. Here's another question. Interesting question. I've never considered this before, but do you believe in working interviews where the person does not get paid? I'm assuming the question's asking like paid for their time for the interview. And maybe that's a new incentive that companies can offer to pay for the interview time.
That is, I guess, an incentive that you can consider, but you have to think of how you're going to work that out, like within your payroll system or you know, accounting system. I've never actually worked with an organization that has paid anybody for an interview, so that is definitely an interesting thought. And I'd be happy to look at statistics for you and get back.
Okay, great. A few more questions here. You know, you mentioned before about one of the most effective tools, of course, is word of mouth. And the question is, what are your thoughts on asking current employees to solicit for open positions?
I think it's a great idea. You know, I've worked for companies too that have, you know, gone out to say restaurants, and they'll leave like a pen, you know, to advertise themselves, or even go and talking to somebody and saying, hey, you know, I think you did a really great job. I think you'd be a good fit for our organization. Are you thinking about, you know, other employment? So even if it's not somebody that you readily know, like a friend or family member, you usually get a good feeling, or hopefully good vibe, when you're out and about and working with somebody that, you know, maybe again at a restaurant, or maybe, you know, at a merchandiser, just the way that they present, how they give their customer service. You can usually tell if they might be a good fit for your culture. So yeah, I definitely think having other ways to advertise, like maybe having cards with the company logo and where they can apply, and just saying, hey, take a look, or even giving them your name or your work number and saying, you know, I really think you'd be a great fit for this. If you want to, you know, talk to me more about the job, here's my information, please call me. And then that way, maybe you can even get a referral bonus for it.
Okay, great. Another question here. We get a lot of questions coming in now. This is great. This person says, I have a job candidate who would require a lot of time to teach them the role, but their personality is great. I have another candidate who already has the skill set, but may not fit in as well with the team. What should I do?
So having a personality that might upset the team might not always end up being the right decision. You could end up losing your current staff, or that new person could end up making waves. So it might be worth investing in training somebody. I'm a big proponent of, you know, hiring somebody green and training them the way that you want them to learn the job. It usually ends up better in cases where somebody might be you know, pretty savvy or an expert in the role, but you may do things slightly different than they've done in the past. So it might be like kind of like conflicting, you know, that they might not want to do it the way the company does it type of situation. So I don't think it hurts to try to invest that person, you think that might be a good cultural or personality fit for the team.
Okay, great. I think I got two more questions here. And I think you may have answered this, or you discussed at least in your presentation, but what are your thoughts on calling time off leave versus dividing into sick days, vacation days, et cetera? Just kind of a blanket overall leave time.
So I think culturally more businesses are going to more of like PTO type of framework, because I just think about it as being yourself. Like, do you really want to call your manager and saying, hey, I'm sick, or is it just better that I need to take, an unscheduled PTO day? So kind of think about it in that situation. Leave, I think, is more for like those more extended situations, like you're out for a surgery, that type of thing. So I think that's a little bit separate from the PTO. But I know a lot of organizations have kind of gotten away from that sick or personal time just because of the kind of stigma that it has.
Great. And this definitely relates to the idea of company culture. The question that was submitted was, who would be the best person, or you could say, people within an organization or business to conduct a new hire orientation, kind of that onboarding process? I mean, obviously you have the HR person, but should there be more of a comprehensive team approach to that onboarding new hire orientation?
Yes, I think it should be more comprehensive. You definitely need that HR person in there to kind of be that, welcoming face, the person that they know they can go and ask questions to, the person that's going to go over policies and procedures. But I also think that you should have time for those employees, to meet other staff members, maybe have a mentor within their group. So it's more of, a continued orientation. So set up some training or meeting times, with leadership members, so they can kind of gain an understanding of what each leadership member does, and maybe how that they can help that leadership member as a new hire. I definitely don't think it should just be one person doing it. It should be a team effort, and, they should be meeting key people throughout the day.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Beth. That's all our questions for now. We will send a follow-up email to all of our attendees that will include Beth's information as well as her presentation. And it'll also include Beth's contact information as well. So if you have additional questions after this, you can definitely follow up with Beth. So Beth, thank you for your time this morning. We know you gave us a lot of great information, and we really appreciate you joining us today.
Oh, sure. No problem. Thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Great. So before we sign off today, I do want to give all of our attendees just a few announcements from the Downtown Inc. side. We have a lot of exciting things happening now and in the near future. Just a reminder, if you're planning anything special for March 1st Friday, which is on March 4th, whether it's a sale, promotion, etc., go ahead and send us an email at info@downtownyorkpa.com, or you can submit it on our promo form, which is dropped into the chat there. We also, as most of you know, we offer First Friday grants for all of our businesses in downtown York, so they can have family-friendly programming. If you're interested in applying for a Q2 grant, the application closes on March 1st. So that's for First Friday in April, May, and June. And speaking of grants, we also have a new grant rolled out just this week. The York County Trail Towns Bloom grants are now open. You can go to yceapa.org/bloom. And across the 7 trail town communities in York County, there is $30,000 available to businesses so they can make their business more trail friendly. You can use the money for promotions aimed at trail users, outdoor recreation users. You could use the funding for physical improvements like better lighting or facade repairs, or even the addition of bike-friendly amenities. So if you're in downtown York and you want to have more traffic from the rail trail and you want to install maybe a restroom for bike users, or a tire inflation station, this is your place to get your funding. So once again, yceapa.org/bloom. Also, March 15th is our downtown update, our biannual address where we present all the important things that you need to know in downtown York. We have a great lineup of panelists who are going to present some great topics. Once again, that's March 15th, 7:30 to 9 a.m. Early morning, get your coffee at the Appel Center, and you can register at the website downtownyorkpa.com/DU2020. It shouldn't be 2020, that should be 2022, but we'll update that. And we're also still looking for vendors for Go Green in the City, our annual event that celebrates eco-friendly family fun on April 23rd. If you are a eco-friendly vendor and you're interested in applying to vend at our event, go ahead and go to the website that's dropped into the chat. And there is a reduced rate for any businesses within the Business Improvement District. That's the WECO District, the Market District, as well as Royal Square District. That's $50 to vend at Go Green in the City. The events keep coming on in March, we have our next Sweetest Pint, and tickets are still on sale, but they're going fast. The Sweetest Pint, as you know, is a downtown tour of locations that are offering local craft brews paired with delicious treats. And we are excited to have a whole host of excellent local celebrity tour guides for our event. So go ahead and get your tickets soon and go ahead and share that. And last but not least, we are very close to rolling out our 2022 Welcoming Community Grants. With our friends at the Cultural Alliance, we're able to supply funding for those who are looking to bring more welcoming and inclusive events to downtown York. And we will get that information to you shortly when it becomes available. All right, those are all my announcements, and we look forward to seeing you all virtual next month for our next business series workshop on Wednesday, March 16th. And we'll have a session on how you can leverage Downtown Inc.'s events and group promotions for your business. All right, that is all from me. And thank you all. Thank you, Beth. And you will all receive a follow-up email shortly with all this great information. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day.